Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jack Joseph and Morton Mandel Center for Studies in Jewish Education at Brandeis University. I'm John Levison. I'm director of the Mandel Center, and I am delighted to welcome you to our session today. We encourage you to take a look at the Mandel Center events page to learn about other upcoming events. We're delighted to have so many of you joining us live, and we hope to be able to take some of your questions as we go. So feel free to post those questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And we're also recording today's session, and we'll make the recording available afterwards, as we always do, on our website and our YouTube channel, and also on our podcast. Our event today is co-sponsored by the Schusterman Center for Israel Studies here at Brandeis University, so we are delighted to welcome guests from the Schusterman community as well. Today, we have the pleasure of talking with two scholars, Ziva Hassenfeld and Hadar Fisher, who have been working together on a study that we're going to be talking about. Ziva is the Jack Joseph and Morton Mandel Assistant Professor of Jewish Education here at Brandeis University, but not for much longer, because she has been officially promoted to become the Jack Joseph and Morton Mandel Associate Professor of Jewish Education. She's received tenure here at Brandeis. The administration of Brandeis made the very, very wise decision to grant her tenure, and her promotion officially starts the beginning of the new year. Mazel tov, Ziva. And Hadar Fisher is a psychologist and an instructor at Harvard Medical School. And together, Ziva and Hadar have been working on a project that Ziva launched in the days following October 7th, 2023, which was a project to understand how Israeli teachers were navigating their classroom responsibilities during that stressful and traumatic time. She recruited Hadar to the project, and they've continued to gather data from teachers in Israel over time. They've been able to publish their findings in an academic article and a couple of more popular articles, and they are continuing to work on understanding what these teachers are telling them about their teaching in Israeli schools. And that's the project that we're going to be hearing more about today. Ziva and Hadar, welcome. It's good to see you.
Happy to be here. Happy to be speaking about our work together.
Great. So we're talking about the study, as I mentioned, that you've been conducting with Israeli teachers following October 7th. And I mentioned that you've published a couple of articles from the study, and you've also extended the study to learn how things are changing. But take us back to the origins of the project. How did you decide that you wanted to study Israeli teachers? And also tell us a little bit about the methodology. How did you actually carry out the study?
Sure. So I'll speak about the first year of data collection, and then I'll turn it to Hadar, who joined the project at a crucial moment, which was the beginning of our second year in our subsample. So this project really began about 10 days after October 7th, and like almost every Jew in the world, I was a little bit paralyzed, and sort of just not only was it an incredibly tragic and devastating crisis, but there was also just so much media to consume, healthy media, unhealthy media. You could watch everything, and that, in that sense, it was new as far as world trauma goes. And everyone knew that they had to get themselves out of sort of the spiral of just watching the footage. And so I also knew that I wasn't going to focus on my research projects, my book projects, etc. So about a week in, I turned to a friend and I said, wow, it's interesting, or it's intense that so many students, so many Israeli families are coming to Boston and join the day schools. And it's really amazing that the day schools are making the efforts they are to accommodate these families and these students. And she said, well, yeah, because there's no school in Israel. Everything has been shut down. And as soon as she said that, I knew from the research I had done on COVID, of course, that meant they weren't going physically to school, but the teachers were going to be responsible. The teachers are always on the front line. We don't talk about teachers on the front line, but across the globe, it's teachers who wake up the next morning and speak to the children. So whether that was going to happen on Zoom or vis-a-vis WhatsApp or actual home visits, I want to understand that phenomenon. So that's how this research began. And basically, it was a snowball sample. I just contacted every connection I had in Israel and asked them to put it on their social media, put it on their networks, and try to talk to every teacher I could. So the sample was religious teachers, secular teachers, North, Central, South, etc. And that was the first year. The second year, I invited Hadar into the project because we were going to do a subsample, and with her expertise, the question shifted a little bit.
Yeah, pick up the story from there.
Yeah, so the story for me was that I came to the USA for my research just a few months before the war just began. And as a clinical psychologist, I really, and like as a person, I felt like I really, really need to help. So I met patients from Israel and I supported the families of Nova survivors. But at the second year as a clinical, as in my research, what my research is focused on is developing and improving intervention for post-traumatic, for depression. And I was jealous in my colleagues in Israel that they developed this intervention system, big intervention system for people in Israel, and I couldn't do it because I was here, and I felt like I really need to do something, and I wanted to do like something more systematic than just seeing patients in my clinic. And also in my research, I'm very focused on teens' depression, and I was thinking how, and in the war, teens were kind of neglected because we have like all the veterans and we have Nova survivors and teens, just, kids that are going to school where and are, like Ziva said, were very much exposed to these videos. So they saw all this terror that was available on their phones. They were neglected. And I felt like I need somehow to get the access to this population. And then when Ziva told me about her research, I felt like, okay, this is a good way to approach this population through the people that see them every day, through the people that are the front line of our kids. And I wanted to really know what they need because this is the people in the community that help our kids, that help our teens. So I felt like, okay, this is a good access to understand what they need from us. This is not the veterans that we know that we need to help, that we have no system, we have intervention. These are not the Nova survivors families that, of course, we know that need help. This is just people that are there exposed to all this horror, and we don't know what they need. And I felt this was very, very important for me to better understand what these, people in the front line needs from
Yeah.
us therapists.
Thank you. So, and that's one of the kind of key dynamics within the study. You have teachers of math or science or literature or Jewish studies, and now they're also in this extraordinary circumstance where they also have to. They may feel like they need to play this additional role. They may or may not be trained for, and they also are dealing with obviously their own challenging circumstances. So tell us a little bit about the argument. What did you in the research that you've done, the what you've published, what did you learn? Let's start with the first part of the study. In the data that you gathered kind of in those very early weeks, just in the fall of 2023, what did you learn from what the teachers were telling you then?
So I'm gonna talk about what we published on in the first year of data, and then shift and Hadar will help me explain the second because it's a really interesting story. And you had asked about the methodology, and this is also sort of as you all are being invited behind the curtain to how this can be. There's like a very interesting methodological insight here about what happens when you bring a scholar from a different discipline onto a project. So I'm in education and I know how to talk to teachers about teaching. And so my initial interviews, and of course this was happening, I always had a native Hebrew speaker with me on every interview so that when I got caught, when there was someone there to sort of, we wanted the interviews to happen in Hebrew so that unless they were Americans, so that they could speak their first language. But I was just focused on what did it mean to care for students after October 7th. And the first paper that I published was really about Did they think that, you know, staying on task, making sure that the students continue to progress in the curriculum towards the bug route, which is their national exams, that that was the way to show care? Or did they think stopping the curriculum and sort of acknowledging the trauma? And so I really documented the different ways that teachers show care. When I brought Hadar onto this project and we went into the subsample, she brought her expertise from both clinical psychology and research to say, Ziva, like pause and try to get a grasp of who these individuals are as full people. And I'm going to let her explain it, but these interviews became much longer and much more personal. Like I sort of was like, whoa, I didn't even know that interviews in research could feel so intimate.
Uh-huh. So I do want to follow up and hear more about that. Ziva, that was a great teaser. But before we go on, I want to understand a little bit better. So what you heard from teachers is that some teachers were focused on what students need, what they believe students need, which is uh, regular, consistent instruction. They need rhythms, they need routines, they need regularity. And other teachers said or felt what students need now is attention to the special circumstances that we're under. We need to, like, nothing is important. This poem or this science experiment, that's not what's important right now. But both of those populations of teachers, both of those kind of responses are coming from a place of, this is what I think, this is how I express care for students. Am I getting that right?
That's exactly right. So one of the task-based questions that we do in every interview every year, this is a 5-year study, was we give five potential priorities in the classroom to list. And so every single person put students' well-being first. But what they meant by that was exactly what you said. For some teachers, that meant like they need to keep going. Like they have a life ahead of them. They have to pass their exams. And for some, now I took them at face value. I said like, okay, this is their sort of intellectual, cognitive, cerebral approach to teaching. When Hadar came in, she was like, I think that they are manifesting, projecting something. Like these are humans, Eva. And so you have to understand, go a little deeper to understand really what they're saying is what they need.
Yeah.
Hadar, you want to speak to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us, Hadar, what you heard.
Yeah, so I would say like from our intervention research, we know that people can use only the toolbox they have. And the toolbox they have is how to teach the students. They don't have enough toolbox how to help emotionally to the people. So once they don't have the toolbox, we know from from psychological research, we know that you use whatever you have, the available resources that you have. And so for my hypothesis was that each teacher will treat their patient their students in the way they feel that help themselves. So I was thinking like, if for me as a teacher, routine is the best way to keep going, I would think that this is the best way for my students. But that's not going to be always the case. But they would know that will be the case for some students, but not for others. But since this is the only tool they have, this is what they use for all the students. And I think we thought it was amazing. We saw that like every single case.
Hmm.
We ask first the teacher, we ask them like, what helps you to cope? What helps you as a person? What are your resources? And then we ask them, and what your students need, what's the difficulties your students are dealing with, and how they cope and what can help them. And always, every single case, the thing that they said that are difficult for them or help them to cope were the same thing they told about their students. And I guess, again, we are, as a human, that's what we do. We use our experiences to help other people. But this is exactly the differences between, a professional and a regular person that just try to help. That regular people have their own toolbox, but not the expert toolbox. And I felt that's the gap, and this is the gap that we are trying to show
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
world.
So that's really helpful, and it makes a lot of sense. If, particularly under extreme circumstances, if I am feeling, very destabilized, and I'm feeling like, look, I just want to be able to, do the science experiments. I can't, right? I spend all day with, outside of my work, outside of my job in school, I'm distracted by all these other things, or maybe I'm working on other things. During these hours, I want to be able to feel like there's something regular and solid that I can rely on, and I believe in it, right? I'm committed. I'm a science teacher. This is something I've chosen to do with my life. I believe that it's valuable for my students, and so then I project that's what my students want as well. And to a certain extent, we always do this. We always imagine that what we feel about something is what other people feel about something until we learn differently, until something happens that we find out that actually somebody has a different opinion, or somebody has a different approach. Did you hear? So that leads me to the question: did you hear from the teachers um, any moments um, of surprise or of learning? In other words, if you think about like how when the teachers talked about their experience under these very challenging circumstances, were there places where this would be a very simplistic example, where they said, I thought they needed structure, but it turned out they needed flexibility, or I thought they needed flexibility, but it turned out they needed structure? Did you hear any of those kinds of reflective learnings from the teachers?
No, so we didn't. And this is in no way, again, like this is in no way a deficit of the teachers in the sense that, oh, they're not expert, or they're not committed, brilliant people. They're all that. And part of this is again what it means to do interdisciplinary scholarship, because I also didn't notice it until Hadar sort of pointed it out to me, in the sense of, there was one particularly extreme teacher who was like, look, there is no purpose in life if we're not sort of learning big philosophical ideas. So my commitment to care is to give them something to live for. And that is, Freud and Plato and Socrates. And on that one, I knew to be like, and was that what they needed? And he was like, well, one student who was in a particularly hard situation, that wasn't what she needed. But like, really, and this is what Hadar helped me see, like it, we don't come with these toolboxes about sort of not projecting our own experience on. So we had a teacher, and when we publish in English, I'll read in English. When we publish in Hebrew, I'll read in Hebrew. And Hadar will help me if I mess anything up. But one teacher, when we spoke to her last year, she was really, this is, again, we speak to the teachers after the Chagim, after the Jewish cycle of holidays through Sukkot, at the beginning of every year. And so that was a tough place last year. And she said, haben zug haya b'miluim, adayin. He's still in the army. I'm alone with all my kids at home.
Partner.
Right. Kol kach harbe zman. And he said, v'gam kol hachatufim adayin lo chazru habayta. And also the hostages haven't come home. And she's clearly, we called her Yeush, because like she in her personal life is feeling this despair, but then she projects it onto her students in the sense that she goes on to say, and she was in the first year so committed to continuing with her curriculum, but in the second year she herself was feeling this despair, and she completely switched, and she said to them, I wish that I had said to my students to go and to enjoy and to travel the world. Why sit in class bored? So Hadar.
Yeah. So I remember this teacher, and it was very, very interesting because she felt like the best way to cope is go on. And she did that. And she helped her students to go on. But the second days go on, and like they enjoy life and they went traveling, she felt very bad because she was so despair. And then her
So these are students after October 7th who graduated and then took trips? Is that what you're saying?
No, they're in high school. They're in 12th grade. They're getting ready to enlist in the army.
Oh, they took trips.
Yeah, so
and they're skipping school.
Yeah, so trip in school and the vacation, and they were very preparing for the army, and she felt so despair. So, yeah, are you sure you want to go to the army? It's so dangerous. She started to shift, kind of a shift. But then there was kind of a gap between her and her students, and now she didn't know, she was very confused. She didn't know what to do because now her let's just keep going didn't work for her anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And now she was like, she wasn't sure what to do now. What is there in her toolbox? And there was nothing there. So she felt very bad. And it's very interesting because the third time we talked with her this year, she started to learn a therapy course.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so helpful for her. And with the last time we met her, she was despair. We thought we're gonna meet someone like, depressed, a depressed person. And then she went to study treatment herself, and she got this new toolbox, and she felt like it's amazing. I understand what my students need. She said it like that. I understand what they need. I focus on the important thing, on the relationship between us. And
Mm-hmm.
so we met a whole different person. So
Wow.
yeah, so that was
So
kind of again,
that's so interesting.
yeah.
It's um, one of the things that happens in education is that we expect impossible things from teachers. We want them to do everything, including to be therapists, which is unrealistic and unfair. But that's an amazing story. One of the questions that has come in from our audience is about the Israeli context. Did you hear from these teachers? Did they receive guidance? I mean, so they're all working in Israeli schools, which are under the Ministry of Education, Misrael Chinuch in Israel, and um, which also presumably was figuring things out. How did they talk about what kind of guidance or structures that they received from their superiors, from the bureaucracy?
Um, yeah, I'll say something, then Hadar will fill it in. But so again, in the first, both in the subsample of the longitudinal and the first year with all 41, we have teachers of every age, sort of from kindergarten through 12th grade. And we also have special ed teachers, and we also have teachers who are the homeroom teachers, and which is like a significant category in Israeli schools. Um, and so each one was getting different directives, what to do. But for the younger kids, there was a requirement to immediately switch to Zoom. And then for the teachers, if students weren't showing up, weren't turning their cameras on, they would have to call the families. Um, etc. For the older students, there was, and Hadar, you'll fill this in, but there was some postponement of certain exams, and not postponement, but also they were unsure which ones were going to be postponed, which ones weren't. And so again, so the directives they were getting in no way concealed the teacher's own priorities.
Hmm.
It was just sort of more fodder for their own worldview on what it meant to take care of children at this time.
Uh-huh. So within the structures, they actually had a kind of freedom to follow their own path or what they believe to be best for the children. Hadar, did you want to say more about that?
Yeah, I want to say that, but I never heard some instruction about the emotional part. So maybe on the educational stuff, but not on the emotional part,
Hmm.
which is very needed. And I will respond to what you said, like we expect the teachers to be therapists or something like that. We don't. I don't think they can or should. But there are very like, and this is what I do in my research. We know that, for example, parents, when you give them a very short psychoeducation, it's very helpful because now they know they have few sentences in their heads, so they are not helpless. And being helpless, like that's the worst. And when you don't have toolbox, you are helpless. So it's very short, very psychoeducation, few sentences that is very helpful. So I feel like these very tiny interventions could so much help the teachers
Hmm.
because we have a good materials, we have good teachers, we have teachers who want to do the work. They are amazing. They were amazing, each one of them. And they just needed, very simple psychoeducation that will let them like think widely about what are the different needs and what they need and how their
Yeah.
emotional responses are, affecting their students. Very simple. Uh,
Yeah. So that's helpful, Hadar. I'm wondering, um, about another aspect of the context, and this is also a question that's come in from the audience about the relationship between the experience of the teachers in this traumatic experience in these years and not that long ago in COVID. So one hypothesis could be that teachers actually had the benefit of kind of learning through COVID about how to cope with challenging circumstances, Zoom, navigating, whatever, regularity and flexibility. Another hypothesis could be actually that was completely useless because it was such a different kind of traumatic experience that whatever lessons we might have learned are actually not applicable. Did you hear anything from the teachers about kind of the not so long, not so distant experience of COVID?
On the technical side, yeah, they knew how to use Zoom. They were used to having their kids in the background and having to teach.
Hmm.
On the psychological side, yeah, it was apples and oranges. And they spoke about this that at least with COVID, they could tell their students how to stay safe.
Hmm.
And yet here, a lot of them, especially in the first year, but also in the second year, it was unclear to them exactly what they felt they could say to their students honestly. So
Hmm.
in that sense, there was no comparison.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really powerful formulation, Ziva. If I, as a teacher, if I can at least be the voice, if I can provide guidance, I can say, look, there's some uncertainty, but if you wear masks or if you don't go out, whatever the guidance is, I feel like I'm fulfilling my responsibility. And under these circumstances, maybe that just wasn't available. We're almost at a time, and I want to, and I know it goes so quickly. We could talk about this amazing study at greater length, and I know that there'll be publications coming forward, and we're looking forward to that. But the last question I want to ask each of you is, what do you think, particularly Jewish educators and Jewish leaders, what do you think they should learn from this research project?
I'll end with a bang. If you love your kids, invest in your teachers. You can't have one without the other. Your kids spend all day in school. If you're trying to cut corners on professional development, on allowing your teachers to be cared for as their whole selves, that's going to have implications for your children. And I'll turn to Hadar. What Hadar has reminded me is that as far as sort of being an adult in a child's life, there are really easy ways to sort of to build your toolbox. Why
Mhm.
are we not doing them?
Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm signing every word Ziva just said. I remember as a kid saying when teacher came to school very angry, we were joking when they were shouting at us. We were joking like maybe they fought with their, kids at home, something like that. We knew as kids that people are projecting. So if we know that, we have good tools in psychology to help people with that.
Mhm.
And it's so, we just need the resources to help our teachers to be so good with our kids, and we can do that. And I think it's such an important mission.
Thank you. Thank you, Ziva and Hadar. It's great to talk with you about your work, and I really appreciate the message that you're leaving us with. Even under these challenging circumstances, one of the takeaways is how important it is to invest in our teachers and helping them grow and helping them be the best professionals. We know from your research how much they care. That comes through loud and clear. They don't always know the right thing to do. None of us do, but they care enormously and they're worthy of our investment. Thank you all for joining us. I encourage you all to check out the Mandel Center events page to learn about our upcoming events and subscribe to the YouTube page and to the podcast. Our next event is coming up on December 11th. That will be a book launch event for a recently published edited volume called Teaching and Learning in Jewish Day Schools. We're looking forward to that. Thank you again, Ziva and Hadar. Thank you all for joining us. Be well.